Yo, what's up, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. We've got some games to talk about today. I think there are about 4 that I really want to hit on. There are around 10 or so games today, but not all the games had something super interesting, or they're already something that I've talked about pretty recently. And for a lot of you, that means I've cursed your team, so I will spare you by not talking about your team and avoiding the curse. So, let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. Sorry, Hawks fans, but I want to talk about Trae Young. Trae Young is one of those guys who, coming into the year, a lot of people were kind of doubting a little bit, which is crazy because of the crazy run that him and the Hawks had last playoffs going to the Eastern Conference Finals, pushing the eventual NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks to 6 games. Coming into this year, Trae Young and the Hawks were riding a high. They were a team that looked like they were on the up and up to become one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. But then the NBA made the rule changes. And if you don't know what those rule changes were, basically they kind of removed that play where a shooter would like pump fake and a defender would jump towards them and then the shooter would kind of like lean into them and shoot. It was a move that Trae Young and many other players did a lot because it was effective. It got you to the free throw line. And for a player as effective as Trae Young from beyond the 3-point arc, it got him a lot of 3-point fouls, and all in all, the NBA just didn't want it anymore, and so they got rid of it. And many people were like, Trae Young's screwed. They were like, Trae Young is a foul merchant. Trae Young can't do this, can't do that. Trae Young is going to be exposed this season, is what a lot of people said. And instead, he's dominating. Right now, he's probably, if the Hawks were a little bit better, he'd be an MVP candidate. He is having an incredible season. Let me read you this string of his last 8 games. The Hawks are 5-3 in these games. They're also dealing with some pretty major injuries, which I'll mention in a second. But in the last 8 games, Trae Young's stats go as this: 30. So I'm going to go by like each game. First game, 30 points, 3 assists, or 30.6 assists, 5 threes, 31 points, 11 assists, 31 points, 10 assists, 33.7 assists, 33 points, 10 assists, 25 points, 10 assists, 25 points, 15 assists, 29 points, 11 assists. So that's where Trae Young's at this point. He is dominating. He is playing amazing basketball, and he is helping keep this Hawks team afloat while they go through a pretty tough portion of their schedule where they're having to face teams missing Bogdan Bogdanovic, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, amongst other players. Those are big names. Those are guys that really help this squad. And so Trae Young is helping them stay afloat, and he's just balling for a team that really needs him right now. And he's a player, like I mentioned, that people weren't believing in, which was shocking because of how good he showed he was. He showed that even if he's not scoring, he's still very effective. That's something that's always been clear about Trae Young, and especially in the playoffs. I got to see him live. If you didn't know, I went to Game 7 of Hawks versus Philly with my brother, who's a Sixers fan. And when I went to that game and saw him live, it's clear how good Trae Young is when you watch him live. In that game, he was horrible scoring the basketball. He couldn't buy a shot in that tough physical Game 7, but he was still impacting the game in so many ways. His gravity, I know that's a word people use a lot when talking about shooters, but his gravity was ridiculous. They had to guard him even if his shots aren't falling because of how effective he is. His playmaking is otherworldly. He always creates opportunities, and even if he's not the one scoring, he's setting up someone to set someone else up. Trae Young is always involved in the offense, and he's changing the game every single play that he's in. And it's clear if you watch the games. It's even more clear if you get the chance to see him in person. I'm glad I did because it gave me a new appreciation for his game. And Trae's just hooping right now. In the game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, like I mentioned, Trae Young had a really solid game, 29.7 rebounds, 11 assists, and an 11-point win over a Timberwolves team that's been playing pretty well. Once again, like I said, without a bunch of pieces, they're starting Thunder legend Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot at the small forward right now, and he did have a good game. He had 23 points, but he's probably not the guy that they're hoping would be starting at small forward at this point in the season. So shout out to Trae Young. He's really hooping. I'm glad he's proving people wrong. This Hawks team in general had a pretty good game, 13 from John Collins, 16 from Clint Capella. You had 20 from Danilo Gallinari, another Thunder legend. But it's just cool to see a guy like Trae Young that is continuing to ball out, and he's really having a phenomenal season. Like I mentioned, Hawks are 5-3 in those last 8 games that I talked about. In those games, they've played the Thunder, the Spurs, the Grizzlies, the Knicks, the Pacers, the Sixers, the Hornets, and the Timberwolves. So that's their schedule if you're wondering what it was. Yeah. So shout out to Trae Young. He's continuing to hoop. He just really is one of those guys that I think he's kind of the definition of proving people wrong. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I like when players prove me or other people wrong. I like to see them succeed. And I do think Trae Young is a guy, if this Hawks team can get healthy, the Eastern Conference seems very wide open. Not just in terms of the playoffs, but in terms of standings. The Hawks are 13-12 right now. They're not too far back. They're a team that I could see making a run for one of the top seeds in the East. And if they do so, Trae Young may very quickly enter MVP conversations with the way he's been playing. So shout out to Trae Young and shout out to the Atlanta Hawks. Next, I want to talk about, of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is the first time that they've played since that game that we will not discuss the score of. They won by 11 points against the Detroit Pistons. Getting Shea and Giddey back was huge. Lou Dort, 28 points. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, career-high 13 assists. Also scored 30 points. Back-to-back games now with 30 points or more. Shea's just hooping right now. He's reminding everyone why last season he should have been an all-star. I will die on that hill. He should have been an all-star. But also just showing people how good he is. 12 from Josh Giddey and 5 assists. 12, 3 and 3 from Kenrich Williams, who is a monster defensively. He also had 4 steals in this one and 2 blocks. He is everywhere, and I hope he's in a Thunder jersey for a very long time. The Detroit Pistons side of the ball, Cade Cunningham had one of the best games of his career. Cade is the real deal. Every time I watch Cade Cunningham play, and especially the more comfortable he's gotten, it is clear that this should be his team. Jeremy Grant is probably still the best player on this team right now, but Cade is slowly working towards taking that mantle. 28 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. He's getting more comfortable with his 3 ball. He's just very methodical is kind of the word that I would use. If you don't remember that whole basketball player versus hooper debate, that was completely absorbing Twitter or basketball Twitter over the course of this past summer. He's a basketball player. He has a super high IQ. Everything he does, it feels like he's kind of what's the word? Comprehending, that's the word I'll go with. It feels like he comprehends the game at just a higher level than a lot of other guys. It's especially noticeable when you watch him kind of maneuver around screens and work his way to the basket. It's super smooth. It's super all deliberate. It doesn't feel like he's ever unsure of what to do. It seems like every move is planned out, and even if a shot doesn't go in, it feels every time you're like, yeah, that's a good shot. Cade, I get why he took that. Other than the 1-3 towards the end where he took where Baisley blocked him, that was probably his one really bad play of the night. Other than that, a few turnovers here and there. Obviously, missed shots are going to happen, but he was sinking threes. I think he had 5 or 6 in this one. And we were leaving him open. I think he came into this game shooting under 30% from 3. That clip has definitely gone up with this game, and Cade is slowly showing people why he was the number 1 overall pick. He's a really good player, and I think people kind of have been sleeping on him because of how good Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, Josh, how quickly a lot of these rookies kind of came out of the gate. Cade Cunningham, coming back from injury, started off a little bit slow, very, very slow actually, and it just took him some time to get to where he is now, and now Cade is, this should be his team. Cade should be taking the most shots on this team. He's going to need some help, and the Pistons right now look like they're in line for potentially another 1st overall pick, so help will be coming to Cade pretty soon, but for right now, I hope he gets some help soon, because he is super fun to watch. Don't sleep on Cade Cunningham, which is weird to say for a 1st overall pick, but I feel like no one's talking about him, because I didn't see anyone, or I saw a few people. I follow 11,000 people on Twitter, so I definitely saw some people talking about the Cade thing, but not as many as I should have, because he had potentially the best game of his career, even in a loss, and yeah, shout out to Cade Cunningham. Next, I want to talk about the Hornets-Sixers game. The Hornets, very undermanned in this one, and Joel Embiid destroyed them. 43 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists. Killed the Hornets. It was rough, and this was a game where it was Joel Embiid's win. I saw one Sixers fan say something like, this win shouldn't count for the Sixers record, it should count strictly for Joel Embiid's record. That's how much he carried this team tonight. And yeah, I mean, Tobias Harris had 21 and 11, he was fine. 16 from Shake Milton, who did a good job stepping up a little bit as the point guard with Tyrese Maxey out, but that was really it. So yeah, this was their game, winning in overtime. On the Hornets side of the ball, a pretty kind of spread out effort. 35 from Kelly Oubre, who continues to kind of make a case to maybe be a starter when everyone's healthy, or to be the 6th man of the year, I guess. 12 from Nick Richards, who stepped up in the center role with Plumlee out due to COVID protocols. 16 from Miles Bridges, 12 from Gordon Hayward, 16 for PJ Washington, 11 from James Bouknight, who got some pretty solid run for the first time over the course of this season. So shout out to James Bouknight for getting that that run. And yeah, big win for the Sixers, going and beating a Hornets team that, while they are missing a bunch of guys, they're still competitive. They just beat a Hawks team that I was just talking about a few days ago, while being also very undermanned. So shout out to this Hornets team for putting up a fight, and for the Sixers for taking it to them. And finally, I want to talk about the Spurs-Suns game a little bit. This one is kind of just a Chris Paul praise section of the video. Chris Paul's ridiculous. He had 21 and 10 assists. He also had a block on DeJounte Murray, who's like a million times taller than him at the same position. And he's having a phenomenal year. But Chris Paul he is one of the most clutch players I've ever seen. It is ridiculous. And I don't think people talk about it enough. He is leading the league in clutch scoring, or clutch field goals percentage at least. The Suns are the best clutch team, and it is mostly because of him. His ability to just slow down the game and force the other team to play at his pace in these clutch time moments is so big for why the Suns are so dominant. There is never a game in clutch time. The Suns could be down 9 with a minute to go, and I would still think they were going to win, because Chris Paul was going to make it happen. He was either going to take like 4 mid-ranges and bring it to a 1-point game, or he's going to somehow get the ball to Devin Booker. He's just so good at orchestrating the flow of the game. I don't think you truly appreciate it until you see him on your team, really. That season that he played with Oklahoma City made me appreciate his game more than I really ever could if he hadn't played for us. Chris Paul is a monster. I do want to give a shout to the Spurs, who continue to play close games, especially against a team like the Suns. DeJounte Murray is probably the most underrated player in the NBA, 17 and 14 assists. I need to make a video about DeJounte Murray, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comment section below. But he just continues to do everything incredibly well. 14 from Jakob Poeltl, 14 from Doug McDermott, 13 from Keldon Johnson, 12 from Derek White, 15 from Bryn Forbes. So a bunch of guys putting some buckets. Josh Primo got 18 minutes in this one for 5 points, but falling by 4. I mean, to the Suns, it's like, that's fine for a Spurs team that's not very good at 8 and 14, while the Suns are 20 and 4. I'm sure they would have liked to win this one, but that's a solid effort, even if the Suns don't have Devin Booker. And that's another thing. The Suns continue to remain afloat despite not having Devin Booker. Their second best player, wherever you want to put him with Chris Paul. One of those two things. He is a really good player, and I'm sure they're missing him a lot, but they continue to roll on. They continue to grab some wins, and the Suns are at the top of the West, right next to the Golden State Warriors. So those are my thoughts on these games. Also, one thing I do want to mention is that Steph Curry, I believe, is 15 threes away from tying Ray Allen for the most all time. He's got a chance to do it in California at home against the Portland Trail Blazers, which is a team that he's known to go off against, but he would need 16 threes to break the record, which is by far the record for threes made in a game as well. So that would be pretty poetic. I just kind of wanted to make you aware of that record coming up. If he doesn't get it next game, I'm sure he's going to get it the game after against Philly. So he's going to get it in like the next 2 games. I'm sure I'll make a video about it because it's a huge milestone for the greatest shooter of all time. So keep an eye out for that. I appreciate y'all watching. Let me know what your thoughts were on these games today. If you made it to this point in the video, drop me a Trae Young is a beast in the comment section below to let me know that you made it to the end. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real one save.